Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for joining us. It is currently 3:30 a.m. and we just got finished with our third playthrough of Ankh.
Yep.
On the same evening. We have a off-camera playthrough where we learned the game. We have a 3-player playthrough with Alex Radcliffe from Boardgame Clo.
And we have a two-player
that we just wrapped
up. Us two,
up.
head-to-head.
Now, you're seeing this before any of those gameplays are out. Those gameplays will be coming out in the next week to week and a half or so. So hit the subscribe button down below. Stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of coverage coming out, including some rules upkeep videos, some quick start guides. We have some plans around this game. But for now, we want to dive into our first impressions, our first thoughts after a 3-player game, a 2-player game, and a 4-player game teaching.
Yes.
Let's swing into what this game is, and then get into the thoughts.
It's glorious.
Whoa, those are thoughts early.
It's glorious.
Do you want to give a brief overview of what's going on here?
So my mind actually jumped to, it's a little tangential, but do you know the author Rick Riordan? He writes young adult books.
I like this tangent though. Keep going.
Yeah.
I have a story for you afterwards.
He writes young adult books, and he has his original series with Greek mythology, and that actually reminds me of Blood Rage. His next series was Egyptian mythology, and that's reminding me of this game, Ankh.
So this is going to be the lineage of Blood Rage, Rising Sun, and, well, now Ankh. This is the third part in that trilogy. They're area control games designed by Eric Lang, published by Simon. You probably already know that if you're watching this.
And they're all specializing in a different type of mythology, using a different type of gods, of goddesses, and all of that. So the themes are very strong in each game.
And they also function around a varied type of mechanics, from straight area control mixed in with things like drafting in Blood Rage to strategic action selection in this one, I would say.
Strategic action selections, powers and abilities, and battle plan cards.
Powers and abilities are pretty consistent. Battle plan cards are seen in most of them. For me, this one's unique mechanic is
I haven't played Rising Sun as much. Can you... What's the
I only played it once and didn't like it.
Okay.
So I'd like to play it again now that I have more experience with all three, but I can't be a fair judge of it.
That would actually be a really cool play.
It would. It would. We need to get it. I don't think Alex even owns it, so we actually need to get it back to the table and the channel and the collection.
Cool.
Either way, so a brief overview of what we're doing here. Do you want to take a swing at it, or would you like me to?
You can go for it.
So this is going to be an area control game, like I was saying. It's supposed to play very solidly at 2 through 5, 6 if you have the extra expansions. The main function of this game is going to be establishing control across this board for a variety of reasons. First off, you want area control in different regions to resolve battles that are going to happen every cycle of the game based off of your turn progression track. You're also going to have control of different obelisks and monuments and temples because they're going to score you points for the end of the game. The main objective of the game is to have the most points either the quickest or the most points by the time endgame is triggered after the 5th conflict that happens. This is going to be the most unique part of the game, which is going to be our action selection board. Here, you can choose to move, you can choose to gain troops onto the board, you can gather supporters, which are tokens or resources that you can spend to do extra additional actions, and you can unlock your special powers and abilities.
Yep.
On this board, every time you get to this white section up here at the top, you're going to progress the game, pushing it towards endgame one step closer and doing things like establishing territory control, separating regions by creating camels, which create an interesting pathway. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but the mapping of the game actually transforms as you play. You determine the regions that you've cut up this beautiful piece of artwork into, and then you'll also be triggering the battles. There's going to be a total of 5 battles throughout the course. Over here is going to be our asymmetric player powers. Yep. There's actually only a minor amount of asymmetry in the base game that we've experienced. It's going to come down to your gods and their unique powers. Everything else on this board is going to be your Ankh powers. Everyone has access to the same Ankh powers, and they're going to scale around resource generation, character kind of deployment, and devotion, which is going to be your victory points. You're kind of going to be making a decision on how you want to progress as you upgrade and level up. As you take this Ankh power ability down here. You will become a little bit more asymmetric as the game progresses, but you'll find a lot of overlap between players and how they're actually operating on the board. Outside of that, there's 3 ways to win the game. Either make it to the end of the 5th battle with the most devotion, make it to the end of the track there first with the most devotion, or be in the blue zone while the other people are not in the blue zone at all.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think they drowned is the terminology or something along those lines. Outside of that, the one thing that we should highlight, but actually didn't just experience, we experienced it in the previous gameplay, is going to be the merging of gods.
Yep.
The two lowest players at the third battle will actually join forces together, creating a cooperative experience where they're working together to take down the higher deities. It's a bit of a catch-up mechanic, and is probably the most controversial part of the game so far.
Yes. The two players that combine with each other, they get both gods' abilities, but they only have like one set of troops and one Ankh board. And it was the player who was further ahead's Ankh board that you use.
And they get a little bit more control over the actions because each takes one action on their turn, still doing the two that you take every round.
Right.
But you could trigger progression twice.
Faster.
Yeah, a little bit faster.
If that helps your strategy.
And it might give you a little bit more
Yeah.
control over what you're doing. That being said, I've talked for way too long giving the overview. Give me just start setting up the video. Give me your premise, your thoughts. Where do you want to go with this so far? You said it was wonderful at the beginning.
It was glorious. I said it was glorious. So, area control skirmish games are
your genre.
my genre. I love these games. Between Inish and Blood Rage and Cyclades and Kemet and so many more. But those are like the top ones that we play so often. Mm-hmm. This joins their rank. Mentally, I'm starting to compare it with Blood Rage, and as soon as we play Rising Sun, I think I've only played it once or twice, and I don't remember it exactly. As soon as we start playing Rising Sun, I'm going to mentally compare it to that. Automatically, it falls into that category. There's a couple things. What I liked, actually, about the game was I like the asymmetry. I like the powers and abilities scaling up. I like the action selection track. While you do have to sequence a bit, you don't have to sequence too much.
You're not a big fan of sequencing.
I'm not a big fan of sequencing. I like the devotion track, and while I do not like catch-up mechanics, in this game, I felt it was adequate. I felt it worked. Additionally, what I'm liking in this game, besides the area control, besides the action selection track, besides the powers of abilities, I like minis. I really do. I love minis.
There's a few in this game.
There's just a few in this game.
It's a Simon game.
Yep. The things that I did not like. I am wondering if some factions are overpowered. I'm wondering if certain combos of your Ankh powers just create setups where once you pull ahead, you're impossible to catch. So those are my hesitations. So far, we'll see. What about you? What do you like and dislike?
Yeah, so right now, I'm actually really enjoying the area control nature of this game. I think the unique element... I'm not an area control player primarily, especially as a core mechanic. And this one isn't skyrocketing to the top of my list. Like, it's not competing right now for a spot in my top 10.
Not competing with Blood Rage yet.
It is comparable to Blood Rage. And maybe, but honestly, the drafting in Blood Rage is just so darn good. And that is the thing I love about it.
Right.
I don't care about the area control in Blood Rage. I care about the drafting and the feeling the drafting gives me. There's no mechanic right now in this game that is replicating or coming close to the tension I feel when I'm choosing my escalation cards in Blood Rage and my strategy in Blood Rage.
Yeah.
I feel like a Viking prince in Blood Rage. In this game, I feel like an Egyptian god. I'm watching over people and moving kind of slow, but like the Nile's a meandering stream. And this is a bit of a meandering game. I really like it, though, for context. Like, I really, really like this game so far. And it's interesting that I like the area control, because the thing I like about it is the fact that it's modular. We are playing where we start designing the board. And that is such a cool mechanic to me.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's this big open plains. At the very start of the game, you have different scenarios you play through. You set up the board differently based on it. And we start cutting rivets and divots out based on how the game progresses and what we're strategically going for. And I really like that. I like that it gives you a little bit more agency and a little bit more control over the tabletop experience. On top of that, or alongside that, I'm liking the player powers and abilities. I like the characters. I like the minis. They don't feel overly complex. I feel like right now I could pick up any player board and do another head-to-head.
Yeah.
And that's actually really interesting to me, because I don't want to play Blood Rage 2-player. And so I could have room in my collection for both these games, primarily because I would enjoy playing a different faction against a different faction right now.
Yeah. Especially with all the expansions that they came with.
Yep.
This is really one of the first area control games I've come across that works at 2 players.
But you feel like it's functioning at 2 players.
It functions at 2 players. Yes, it is basically a head-to-head skirmish game, but it involves area control, and that's the place where 2-player, most area control games don't excel at 2 players.
If you have good recommendations for 2-player area control games, let us know.
Please, that's my genre.
It's her genre. I mean, and if we find good ones, there's a chance, we really would add them to collection.
Oh, yeah.
Other things that I like the action selection. I like the way it's pushing the timeline. I don't like that at times it feels like you're just getting into a trap constantly here. It's interesting. It's an interesting puzzle, but that's maybe the most frustrating point as well when it comes to the general game.
So I didn't mind it as much in this game as our last game. Last game, I felt like with more players, you get into traps more, where you don't want to set up other players as frequently, but you also want to do what's in your best interest. This game, I'm wondering also in a 2-player game, if you have enough followers, you raced ahead and got most of the minis. If there's a way to to prevent that, because I went for Ankh every single round.
We both did, but I was first.
So you were first.
So we were both racing ahead.
The only reason you didn't get the crocodile, honestly, was you didn't have
follower.
A single follower in the last round that you probably could have worked around, and that you forgot it was the first one.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, I think that might be a problem strategically. That being said, I didn't find the minis too interesting in any of our games. They were there.
I like my crocodile.
But he was powerful, but actually got diffused very easily.
Yeah, he didn't
add to your...
Well, because you had no character next to me in any of these regions. With my god's power, if you had left a character anywhere adjacent to him, he would have been...
Well, and in a larger game, we would have had more water zones. Your crocodile would have been a little bit more interesting. So those are the things that I'm liking about the game. What I'm not liking about the game so far, the merge mechanic. The merge mechanic, to me, seems like it removes 1 player from the game. And that... My perception of that is that's frustrating.
Okay.
Because if you're halfway through a campaign, and yes, you're playing the worst, but the catch-up mechanic is basically wipe your board, have you join forces with someone else, join their strategy, join their discussion, join their game. It really makes it so it feels like you're just a third player going, hey, are you forgetting about this? Instead of actually winning.
I think one thing that can actually make it better is if you could renegotiate your Ankh powers once you merge.
Change your strategy a little bit.
If you have 2 in each column, you guys can renegotiate and talk.
I could see that, because it could let you join forces as a strategy.
Yeah.
Instead of someone joining the strategy that's already established on the game board. I understand why it's the most controversial part.
Palatable.
I don't necessarily hate it, but the issue is the only thing you really gain from the person that's coming with you is their voice, their insight, their followers, which are reusable, disposable tokens.
Yep.
And if they've been able to unlock any of the special characters, you get those.
You have a max of 4, though. You also get their god's power and ability, which is helpful. And you get more control over the action selection.
You do. And the action selection was a nice buff. But for me, it felt like it was buffing a single character.
Yeah.
It was keeping someone in a game that, honestly, you could have just said that they lost the game. They were out. Lowest player gone.
I don't like player elimination.
I agree,
though.
which is why it's
really
not
don't.
here. And if it was here, we would be complaining about it.
Yeah.
However, it's kind of...
Given that we're mostly going to play this at 2 players, though, we're not going to experience most of player elimination.
And there's an option to play it at higher player counts without that.
Catch-up mechanic.
But I'm curious. My concern is that the core original way to play doesn't have player elimination, but certainly feels like it does.
Yeah.
And it depends on who you're playing with. If you're playing with someone that wants to give you the board and really let you take control of their characters, awesome. But for the most part, in a heavily strategic area control game, someone already has their strategy. And honestly, if you start screwing with their strategy or doing things that go against what they want, you're going to make enemies really fast.
It'll also just tank the game for the both of you.
Yeah, it'd be really frustrating. I don't want someone messing with my pieces. Like, I just played an hour, and I understand you're on my team now. I don't want someone messing with what I was doing.
Right.
And I know what I was doing. I want to tell you about it, because then everyone else hears. They do.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest concern at the moment. Outside of that, I kind of agree with you when it comes to player powers and abilities. They don't feel that interesting. While they are fun to play with, they're not game-breaking in any way. And sometimes I like things that are a little game-breaking. I want to play more head-to-head matches with them. I want to see how they function.
I want to see if ones seem more powerful than others.
Yeah. Because the map is one of my favorite parts about this game, I kind of wish there was a little bit more modularity to the original setup. Because we're always going to be playing with the same puzzle, and we get to then change the puzzle. But I would have kind of liked a secondary map or something that gave us more water regions, more area regions, more...
I would have rather have them given us hexes that we could overlay and change the layout of the map in specifically designed ways that still create...
Yeah. That being said, I don't know if it's necessary. Now, there are some expansions that need to mix in, too.
Yeah.
Like, we have more monsters that we can mix in. We have more gods and more power abilities. There's specifically a Pharaoh expansion, which adds a little bit of, like, a worker placement, I believe, action to this.
Interesting.
And Pharaoh is dealing with, like, the public negotiations of your worshippers in regions. I don't quite know how it integrates, but I do know that it adds an extra layer of strategy and allows you to control for, like, how you're getting devotion in a different way.
Interesting. The other thing I was thinking about was... I'm curious to learn all of the different factions, but based on the two that we've played with most recently, I do not like yours. I think for it to be powerful, it shouldn't limit you, but then it might be too powerful.
It might be too powerful then. It's hard, so my faction ability allows me to tell you, in 2 regions, you can't play one of your battle cards. Now, battle is going to work by selecting one of your various cards, playing it down, and then you don't get it back until you've played a card that adds nothing to your battle, in order to get cards back into your hand.
There are some monsters that will let you get cards back, and there's some factions that let you get cards back.
This is a pretty classic battle option for area control games. I know quite a few games that play with this type of system.
Yep.
How did you feel about how it's implemented here? Because I have some thoughts.
I wanted the cards to feel more powerful.
Yep. The cards feel like math. I can, in almost every battle, I was able to look at it and go, I know what's going to happen.
I know what between the 2 cards that you're choosing.
Yeah.
And then based on those decisions, I know which card I'm going to play.
And it's a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
Like, you might choose the card that I don't want you to choose, and then I made a gamble and I lost. Yeah. And so there is some luck still involved, there is some gamble still involved, but I never felt really cool playing a card. I also never felt really shocked when something happened, other than when I made a dumb mistake, and I was shocked because I'd missed something. Yeah. But not because the card balance felt weird.
I think another thing I'd like is if they gave you, like, 10 different more types of cards that you could craft your own battle deck, so that there's variability in the cards that you're playing from game to game.
It's hard to balance that. I mostly would have liked to see a little bit higher ranges with the cards when it comes to the numbers, and a little bit more scale when it comes to sort of the powers. I want to see level 3 Blood Rage type cards, but everyone has them. Yeah. Right? I want to feel really cool when I'm going
as you advance, you can unlock a new card.
Something. Yeah, something. Or just as changing your cards. I don't know. These didn't feel thrilling to me. The parts of the games that felt thrilling was updating the map and the action selection track, which are the core features. The card play has to take a bit of a step back. The character powers and abilities has to take a bit of a step back in order to make room for those systems. Any other thoughts? Any other first impressions?
No. I like it though.
We're going to do a full review of this. I guarantee we're going to play it enough that we're going to be back just like we were for the Great Wall with a full final thoughts. Yeah. Where are you right now? If you're going to rank this, we do a 1 to 5 scale like Board Game Co does, but we usually add decimals to give nuance to it.
Yeah. Just in case you're unfamiliar with it for some strange reason you haven't watched other videos.
1's a terrible game.
1's a bad game. There aren't very many 1s. 2s are games that there's a reason to like them, it just doesn't fit your personality.
They're games, but they're not for you.
They're not for you. 3s are good games. 4s are great games. 5s are games you're upset when your friends do not want to play this.
Yeah.
Where are you? Want me to go first?
You can go first.
So... this game is probably 3.9. So close to being a 4. So close to being a great game.
Comes down to a few more plays?
Probably a few more plays. Trying out the different player counts a little bit more. Different factions and expansions. And then I'd probably have a better ranking for it.
Yeah. I'm sitting at a 3.5 right now. Which is strange because Blood Rage is a 5. And Blood Rage was a 5 the first time I played it. I think this could likely be 4.2, 4.5. It'll sit at a 4.
It's funny, because Blood Rage is liked by every single person in my game group, it makes me like it less.
Really?
I want to push for games that don't get played
Sure.
more, and I want the other area control games.
I could see this one being one that we get to the table every weekend for the next week or two. Not the next week or two, for the next month or two.
Yeah.
I could see 5 or 6 plays of this happening over the course of the next 2 months.
Also because we don't have to have, like, enough players.
And then the question is going to be where it settles there. I expect, right now it's a 3-5 because I'm not done exploring it yet. And honestly, I want to give it some grace to grow. I think it's going to settle at a 4. I don't think it's going to settle much higher than that, but I also don't think it's going to settle any lower than that. I think it's really solid. The question for me is, after 10 plays, do I feel like I want to keep exploring elements of it? Or do I feel like I've solved the puzzle and I'm kind of... We're a little worried because at the end of the gameplay video, we actually spent some time talking about the Ankh powers.
Yeah.
And I'm a little concerned that there's a few of them that after I have more experience...
You're just not going to choose anything else.
I don't think I would go down a different pathway.
There's no other viable paths
and
to
it's because
victory.
some of them are decent, some of them are boring, and some of them are good.
Great.
Not great, good. And so that's concerning for me. The powers had to scale down to leave room for other elements of the game which are shining. My issue is I like powers a lot, and none of the powers, again, feel fun. None of them feel insane. None of them feel broken. Like, the game feels like it's balanced.
You tried a couple times to break it, and you couldn't because it was...
I tried 2 different ways to break it.
And it wasn't in the rules.
And I like games that allow me to break them.
Yeah.
And I still want to try. Like, one of the experiments we did is I've done a gameplay where I tried to take no Ankh powers, which is a core part of the game. You probably shouldn't try that, but I thought it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
And I stayed competitive up until the end cycle of the game, and then Ankh powers are they're how you start generating victory points.
Yeah. I'm curious how in areas of complexity where this stands, because usually area control games are pretty complex and harder to get a new group up and running and introduce new people who are in the...
I think it's lighter than most.
It's a lighter area control game, which also fits a certain niche. If you want to start introducing players to...
It'd be a good introductory game.
So that was my other thought with it.
Yeah.
All that being said...
Overall, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Overall, it's lovely. If we sound a little despondent and down, it's because it's 4:01 a.m. right now, and we just played it 3 times in a row. So I want some time to sit with it. I want some time to think. But yeah, those are our first impressions, initial thoughts. Again, if you made it to this point, it means you're a fan of either us or this game. We have gameplay on the way. Hit the subscribe button down below. Stay tuned for more. Let us know what you'd like to see. We'd be happy to continue mixing in factions. We're going to keep playing this. Whether or not it's on camera is going to, honestly, be based on the audience. So, with that being said, I'm going to bed. That rhymed.